Hello and welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wanderer. Today I am here for my first Friday reads of 2026. So I am trying to get back into the rhythm of more frequent videos, and Friday reads are one of my favorite kind of sit down chatty videos because I just get to talk about the books that I'm reading or about to start reading or have just finished reading. And so I thought I would start off the new year with Friday reads, even though I feel a little bit rusty at these sit down type videos. And also, my husband got these little clip on microphones for Christmas, and so I thought I would test them out for this video and see if I like the sound quality. So, fingers crossed that it stays working throughout the video. I can see the little green light that tells me that it's on, so hopefully it works and maybe it'll solve some of the kind of glitchy, poor audio that I was having in my last couple of videos. I love the start of a fresh reading year. There's something so exciting about having most of the books that I was currently reading kind of wrapped up by the end of the last year, and then starting fresh with a whole new slate of books in the new year. So I'm always ambitious in January about my reading plans and goals for the year, and full of new enthusiasm about the books that I have chosen to read. I'm on a reading high at the moment because my first finish of 2026 was Emma M. Lyon Volume 8, which is the most recent installment of the Emma M. Lyon series. So I'm now fully caught up with the series, and I just love that book so much, and it was a 5-star read, so there's nothing like starting your reading year off with a 5-star read to kind of set the mood for the year. Last year I had a couple kind of dud reads at the beginning of January, and that is always a bummer for me. So starting off with a 5-star is my favorite way to start my reading year. I only had about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours left in my Emma M. Lyon audiobook to finish off on January 1st, and I had really hoped to finish it in 2025, but it was a carry forward, and I'm glad that I got to start my reading year off on that foot. But that is the read that I just finished, and the whole Emma M. Lyon series will definitely be at the top of my 2025 favorites. So, in an effort to fill the hole in my reading life that wrapping up the Emma M. Lyon series has left, I have finally decided to start the Secrets of Ormdale series by Christina Baehr. And the first book in that is Wormwood, Abbey. And a lot of the same people who recommended Emma M. Lyon, or who I saw give high reviews on Goodreads to Emma M. Lyon, also recommend and enjoy this series. So I thought it would be kind of a good follow on. It's actually like a cozy historical fantasy series, and if you've watched my channel much over the years, you know that I'm not really a fantasy reader, so it's exciting to try something a little bit new. But because it's set in the Victorian era and very much still rooted in historical accuracy, besides the fact that there's dragons, it very much feels like the sort of book that I enjoy reading, even though it has that fantastical element. And so in this first book, we're following Edith, who is the daughter of an Anglican clergyman who receives news that his brother has passed away suddenly and he has inherited the family estate in the Yorkshire Dales. So Edith, her younger brother, her stepmother, and her father travel up to this family estate of Wormwood Abbey to meet her newly orphaned cousins and kind of take stock of the family estate. Her father has been estranged from the family since childhood, and so very quickly we realize that there are lots of family secrets that are hidden in Wormwood Abbey. Edith stumbles across this very strange salamander that she rescues from her library fireplace and takes on as a pet. It's the start of a 5-book series, and I am listening to it on audiobook and thoroughly enjoying it so far. I think I'm probably already like 70% of the way through, and I just started yesterday. It's a pretty short audiobook, like five and a half hours, I think. So between reading Lord of the Rings last year and now picking up this book and really enjoying it, I feel like I'm finally getting a feeling for the niches and subgenres within fantasy that I can have a good time reading, and that's really exciting. One of my reading goals for 2026 is to read more nonfiction because I dipped a little bit below kind of the percentage threshold that I prefer to have in the mix of my fiction to nonfiction ratio. So normally I like to have kind of a 25 to 75% nonfiction to fiction ratio. And last year I think I only read about 18% nonfiction. So I'm looking to increase that a little bit. I think there was 2 reasons. I didn't read as much theology in 2025, and I also didn't really get any social history in. So I'm looking to definitely add in more of both of those things in 2026 and also just pick up more nonfiction in general. So while I was browsing Bookstagram, and lots of people have been putting up their favorites lists and kind of reading wrap ups from 2025, I saw that one of the accounts that I follow there, Sasha Hawkins, had included the book Thunderclap, a memoir of art and life and sudden death by Laura Cumming, as one of her favorite books of 2025. And it is a memoir that is very heavily focused on Dutch Golden Age art. And those of you who've been around since I did my reading through my family tree Netherlands edition know that I love the Dutch Golden Age. It's one of my favorite historical time periods to read books about and set in. And so when I saw that it was a memoir, which is one of my favorite nonfiction genres, about kind of the author's life and how it relates to famous Dutch Golden Age paintings that she saw at different points in her life. And then I saw that my library had a copy on Libby with no hold waitlist. I was like, this is meant to be to pick up for my first nonfiction read of 2026. And I am maybe 10% of the way through. So let me check. 9% of the way through so far, and it is really, really interesting so far. In these first couple of chapters, we are definitely getting those memoir style tidbits about the author's life, but it's also very much biographical about the Dutch Golden Age painter Karel Fabricius and his major works. And I'm really glad I went with the ebook for this because there are pictures of the paintings interspersed on the ebook. The author's father was an artist, and so she grew up kind of immersed in the art world, and she grew up to be an art critic for a major newspaper. And so she definitely has a way of examining paintings through a very academic, critical lens, but also with a deep love for art and for these paintings. And so I'm really enjoying hearing her talk about these different Dutch Golden Age paintings, learning a little bit more about Fabricius. He's an artist who worked with both Rembrandt and Vermeer and had a tragically short life. And so it's just a really interesting memoir so far, and I am looking forward to continuing with that in the coming week. Then, as far as my reading plans for books that I want to start this weekend and into next week, like I said, I didn't read as much theological nonfiction as I typically do in 2025. And so I want to immediately course correct in January and start one of the books that has been on my theology TBR for a while, and that is Walking the Path of Prayer with Jesus, Introduction to the Spiritual Life by Brant Pitre. Brant Pitre is one of my favorite Catholic theologian authors, and I do love the cover art. This is the Road to Emmaus on the cover. And I just think this sounds like a really enriching read. This is a book about prayer and how to grow closer to God through prayer. The little blurb at the top says it's a compelling exploration of the biblical foundations, contemplative practices, and spiritual path of Jesus himself. And it's going to discuss the three major forms of prayer and the three stages of spiritual growth to grow closer to God. I have read, I think, 3 or 4 of Brant Pitre's works before and watched some of his different lectures. And I know that I really enjoy his writing style. And so I have high hopes that I'm going to really enjoy this book and also find it fruitful for building my prayer life in 2026. Then the other book that I have physically with me is the Sense and Sensibility graphic novel by Marvel. I have read the Pride and Prejudice graphic novel before and was really surprised by how much I liked it. And so I want to pick up the Sense and Sensibility graphic novel because there is a Sense and Sensibility retelling that I'm going to talk about next. And I toyed with rereading Sense and Sensibility, but I did reread it fairly recently. And so I thought it would be fun to just read the graphic novel this time before heading into a new retelling rather than rereading the whole book. The art style is actually really quite beautiful. Let me find some sample pages. And I found that Pride and Prejudice was very true to the book, and so I think this is going to be really fun and a quick way to return to the characters of Sense and Sensibility. So then the Sense and Sensibility retelling that I'm planning to read is Marianne, a Sense and Sensibility sequel by Alice McVeigh. This is one that came out at the end of the year, and I got an ARC from on NetGalley. And I have read some of Alice McVeigh's other short Austen-esque fiction and really found her writing style to be very authentic to Austen and to her characters. But the ones that I have read from her before were Pride and Prejudice related, and so I'm excited to have another Sense and Sensibility retelling. There are so many Pride and Prejudice retellings and continuations out there, and so few for other Austen books. One of my favorites is right behind me, right there, The Year in Between by Christina Moreland. That's the only other Sense and Sensibility retelling that I have read. So I'm excited to get into Marianne. And Marianne is telling, obviously, the story of Marianne after Sense and Sensibility, but also after she has been widowed. We know Colonel Brandon is significantly older than her, and so this imagines a world in which she is widowed still as a fairly young woman and is now kind of a wealthy landowner in her own right, and returns to the social scene in London as this young, wealthy widow. And at the same time, her younger sister Margaret is now coming of age. Sounds like she is going to have a number of romantic admirers, including the return of Willoughby, who, as we all know, still has a piece of my heart as my favorite Austen villain. But we're also going to see Henry Crawford from Mansfield Park make an appearance. And she is going to have to kind of figure out how to navigate life without the guidance of Colonel Brandon. So I think that sounds like a really interesting and realistic premise for Marianne's potential story to continue on with. So I'm excited to start that one soon. Then every year around this time, I think I should read Shakespeare's Twelfth Night in the lead up to Twelfth Night. And so I think this might be the year that I actually remember in time to start it. So typically I tend to think about this like on Twelfth Night, and then it feels a little bit too late. It is a 5-act play, so if I start today and read 1 act a day, I will wrap up on Twelfth Night, I think. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Yeah, if I read 1 per day, if I read 1 act per day, I will wrap up on Twelfth Night. I'm planning to immersion read this with the audio produced by the Shakespeare Network. I did that with King Lear, and I found that it was a really well-performed audiobook. I think listening to Shakespeare is both how he intended his plays to be consumed, but is also very helpful for allowing yourself to get caught up in the story and not get bogged down in some of the more maybe unfamiliar phrasing and words that are used. So that is one of his plays that I have never read yet. Eventually, I would love to be a Shakespeare completionist, so I keep picking away at 1 or 2 plays a year, and I think this is the year that I'm going to finally get to Twelfth Night. And then lastly, one of the books that I had seen on the Goodreads Choice Awards this year that jumped out to me was What We Can Know by Ian McEwan. Ian McEwan is the author of Atonement, which I haven't read, but I have watched the movie adaptation of. And I put my name on the list on Libby, and then it came up as a skip the line loan. So I have 5 days with it. We'll see. It's like a 12-hour audiobook, so I would need to definitely prioritize that after I wrap up the Wormwood Abbey audiobook. But if I don't take advantage of this skip the line loan, it's like a multiple month wait. And so I definitely am hoping that I can both start and finish it in the next 5 days. I got quite into like dystopian, post-apocalyptic type, futuristic, I guess realistic sci-fi. I read maybe 4 or 5 last year, some of which will be in my 2025 fiction favorites, including Parable of the Sower, How High We Go in the Dark, and Moon of the Crusted Snow. All 3 of those were in my top 10 favorites of 2025. And this book definitely seems to be in the same sort of niche of sci-fi or post-apocalyptic fiction. And the description made it also sound like it has one of the elements that I really enjoy from Emily St. John Mandel's writing, particularly Station 11 and Sea of Tranquility, which is kind of this nostalgia for the present we get when we read books that are set post our societal collapse. So when we get to see how people who are living through and after our society look back on the lives we're currently living, it definitely makes me kind of look with a fresh appreciation on the things that are good in our current world. And so from the reviews I've read for this book, it sounds like this is definitely in the same vein as that. So it's a dual timeline story. The first part set in 2014 when There is a poet who has written a new poem dedicated to his wife called A Corona for Vivian. And then the second timeline is set in 2119, so 100 years in the future from that point, and there has been a catastrophic nuclear accident that has led to global flooding that has submerged most of the Western world. So, in what used to be England, there is a scholar and researcher who is trying to discover the story behind this famous poem. And it says that Thomas looks back on the archives of the distant era, being 2014, and thinks how wild and full of risk their lives were, and is captivated by the freedoms and possibilities of human life at its zenith. It claims to be a love story about both people and the words they leave behind, a literary detective story which reclaims the present from our sense of looming catastrophe and imagines a future world where all is not quite lost. So it definitely feels like it has a lot of elements of books that I thoroughly enjoyed in 2025. So despite the short timeline that I have with it on Libby, I am hoping to get to that as well in the next 5 days. So that is the reading that I have planned for the next week. I would love to know what your first start of 2026 is. If you have any books that you're really eager to get to in this first week of the year to kind of set the stage for your reading year. And I hope that you have some wonderful reads lined up for this January. And until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book. Bye.